I thought my grandmother's garden was just a patch of soil and old tomato vines, but it turns out she was using it to keep something buried. Something ancient, something alive. When I came back to her countryside home after her death, I expected grief, silence, maybe a few childhood memories. But what I found were whispering mounds in the earth, charms carved from bone, and a cellar door that unlocked itself at night. The soil on that land remembers everything, and now that she's gone, it wants someone new. This is my story of what my grandmother left behind, and the thing beneath her garden that should never have been unearthed. Stick around, because what started with strange whispers turned into a battle for my soul, and the terrifying truth at the end of this story will stay with you long after the last word is spoken. I never believed in curses, or the kind of folklore whispered through generations like warnings on the wind. But after I inherited my grandmother's house, deep in the English countryside, that changed. Forever. It began the night I arrived. The cottage sat on the edge of an overgrown field, surrounded by thorny hedges and drooping willows. My grandmother, Edna, had lived here for almost 60 years, alone, reclusive, and, let's just say, particular. She passed away in her sleep, or so the coroner said. But from the moment I stepped onto that property, I sensed something else, something watching. Inside, the house was musty, filled with the scent of dried herbs and decaying wood. Everything had been left untouched. Her teacup still on the table, her boots by the door. But it was the garden that drew me in, or rather, the unease it gave me. Behind the cottage, the garden sprawled out unnaturally long, fenced off from the woods by a row of crooked wooden posts tied with twine and bells. The soil had been freshly turned in places, as if someone had been digging recently. Odd shapes jutted from the earth, small mounds, bundles wrapped in cloth, and strange symbols drawn in ash around them. That first night, I dreamt of worms crawling through my fingers, of something tapping at the window, and I woke to the sound of bells, softly chiming from the garden. I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was just wind, or maybe foxes. But when I went out the next morning, one of the mounds was dug up. It was hollow inside, and empty. I began finding small items in odd places. A tooth wrapped in silk left on the windowsill, a doll's head nestled between the flower pots, and each night, the whispers grew louder, murmuring just beyond the edge of hearing. I called the local council. They brushed me off. The police did too. Just wildlife, they said. Old place like that plays tricks on you. But I remembered something from when I was little. A warning Gran gave me, the one and only summer I stayed there. Never dig where it's been tied, she told me. Never disturb what's been bound. I didn't understand what she meant, not then. Now, I think I do. On the fourth night, I found her journal, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, bound in twine and soaked with dried lavender. Inside, page after page detailed something she called the Hollow Pact. Descriptions of planting protection in the ground, of burying things to keep the old hunger asleep. Bones, charms, even pieces of herself, nails, hair, blood. She wrote about a thing, no name given, just it. A presence that came with the land, one she had kept bound through ritual and sacrifice. And then the entries stopped. The last line written in smudged ink read, "It is restless. I am too old to hold it down again." That night, I woke up to dirt beneath my fingernails, and a knock at the back door. 3 knocks. Measured, deliberate. I looked through the window. No one there, but the mounds in the garden were, moving. Something was trying to claw its way out. I ran. I locked myself in the bedroom. I tried to call someone. No signal. Just static, like whispering through the phone. The bells rang again, and through the floorboards, I swear I heard something breathing, something waiting. I didn't sleep after that. All night, I sat in the corner of the bedroom, staring at the door with a fire poker in my hand, jumping at every creak and groan. The house was alive with sounds, whispers in the walls, footsteps where no one should walk, and that low, wet breathing that came from beneath the floorboards. When morning came, the sun didn't bring relief. The air felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. I made coffee with trembling hands and told myself I was hallucinating. Grief, stress, a rotten house messing with my head. Then I saw the footprints, muddy, bare, and tiny. They started at the back door and led across the kitchen floor, vanishing near the cellar steps. But the cellar door, it was still locked. The key, one of those old iron skeleton ones, hung beside it, untouched. And yet, when I pressed my ear to the wood, I heard a faint scratching. From the other side, I couldn't stay there. I drove to the village, hoping to talk to someone, anyone who knew what Edna had been doing out here. The pub was mostly empty, save for a few old-timers. When I told them my name, one of them stopped mid-drink. "You're Edna's girl?" he asked. I nodded. He set his glass down slowly. "Then you'd best get out of that place, before it remembers you." They didn't say more than that, just gave each other sideways glances and muttered something about the binding failing. One old woman, a shopkeeper with cloudy eyes, handed me a sprig of wolfsbane on my way out and said, "For the graveyard things, they hate roots that rot but never die." I left shaken but curious. I knew then that my grandmother hadn't just been superstitious. She was part of something old. Something hidden beneath civility and pavement. Something bound to the land. That night, I decided to read more of the journal. In the final pages, Edna detailed the creation of the binding ritual, a garden spell using human remains and charms carved from ash wood to seal the thing beneath the soil. She never said what it really was, just that it wasn't human, that it came before the house, before the village, that the people who first settled here knew of it and tried to contain it. But the thing feeds, it waits for death, grief, fear, anything it can root itself in. My grandmother had kept it buried for decades, but her death meant something had changed. It was waking, and it wanted me. That night, it made its move. It started with the whispers, louder now, more distinct. Not just voices, but words. My name, Ava, Ava, let us out. Then came the sound of nails, long and sharp, scraping wood. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs as the cellar door slowly unlocked itself and creaked open. From the darkness below came a single child's giggle. I ran, out the front door, into the garden. I didn't know where I was going, just away from the house. But the garden had changed. The mounds were bigger, fresher. Something breathed beneath them, like lungs swelling under the dirt. And then I saw her, a little girl in a white nightgown, standing between the tomato vines. She looked up at me, hollow black eyes, mouth sewn shut, skin grey like ash. I screamed. Behind her, the mounds began to crack open. Hands, many hands, reached through the soil. Some skeletal, some not, all twitching, all reaching for me. I ran back toward the house, but as I passed the back door, it slammed shut on its own. I was trapped outside, with them. I turned, and they were standing now. Dozens of figures, once buried, now risen. Children, old men, women with their necks bent at impossible angles. All of them watching, waiting. And behind them, something larger, a shape shifting beneath the soil. It rose like a wave of earth, towering, faceless, made of roots and bones and black, wet dirt. It spoke, not in words but in feelings, grief, loss, regret, hunger. And then it lunged. I don't remember how I got back inside, just that I locked the door and screamed into the void. The journal fell from my hands, pages open to the last ritual, the final burying, a spell to seal it again. But it needed blood. A sacrifice of blood tied by blood. Me. I had no choice. I took the knife from the kitchen drawer. I carved the sigils into my palm, just like Edna had drawn. I walked back into the garden, reciting the words in trembling breath. The ground shook. The air buzzed like 1,000 insects. The thing screamed, a sound like dying trees and weeping stones. It surged toward me, and I drove the bloodied charm deep into the soil, just as lightning cracked above. Everything stopped. The air grew still. The figures crumbled. The mounds collapsed. And the presence was gone. It's been 6 months now. The garden's quiet. The bells haven't rung. The house no longer breathes at night. I still hear whispers sometimes, but only in dreams. I've kept the journal. I keep it close, because I know someday the binding may fail again. And when it does, I'll be ready to bury it once more. If you're still listening, then you made it out, for now. But stories like these, they don't really end. So if you felt the chill, if the whispers stayed with you, like, share, and summon more tales by subscribing, because here, the next nightmare is always waiting.